Today on Till We Make It, we're going to cover a difficult, challenging, and possibly even awkward topic that we absolutely have to be able to talk about, and that is the strange phenomenon of performing under the influence. I'm Mike Quackenbush, this is Till We Make It, and today we're talking about a topic on which I have very little wiggle room, and I want to convince you to have no wiggle room on either. I can tell you with relative certainty that more than once in the course of my career, I have gone to the ring and ended up performing with someone who was under the influence of drugs or alcohol. During that time, that I entrusted them with my safety and my health and my well-being, let alone what all of our obligations are to the paying customers, to the people that provided us stage time, the person I was sharing the ring with, I am almost entirely certain, was performing under the influence of drugs or alcohol. And this is an exceptionally dodgy place to find yourself, take it from me. I am of the opinion that it is not just irresponsible, but a violation of the trust that the greater fraternity of professional wrestlers must hold sacred if someone were to come to the ring with their judgment and reaction time in any way, shape, or form impeded or impaired. Thankfully, I can say this was far more common years ago than it is now. However, this sort of thing does still happen. And had it not come up very recently, for me, I probably wouldn't even think to make a video about it for Till We Make It. But once again, my career recently had a brush with this exact thing, which reminded me that maybe it's the sort of thing we've got to have a conversation about, even though this topic matter does tend to prickle people. And I don't doubt there is somebody listening right now who's feeling a bit prickled that this is the topic of one of these videos. And you might imagine an argument of this kind. Someone might try to put forth the idea, oh, well, I'm not really relaxed unless X, Y, or Z. Or the only way that I can take my nerves away is if I do A, B, or C. And I want you to know, I hear all of those arguments, and I still feel exactly the same. I feel like it is irresponsible and a violation of trust if you do anything that slows down your judgment or otherwise impairs your abilities while we are out there performing live in the ring, because I am trusting you to keep me safe. Some years ago, I had traveled to work for a company that is quite a distance from where I'm standing right now. And I observed someone getting high before their match. They went on to make an argument to me, and I don't know where their science was from, I would like to point this out, but they made the argument to me that it was perfectly fine doing what they were doing because they were certain it could not possibly slow down their cognitive ability more than 1/8 of a second. 1/8 of a second. I want to offer two takes on this topic from two different perspectives. First, my perspective as a performer. And just to make sure that nobody gets offended here, let's pick someone who is both famed for their sense of humor and renowned for being deceased, like Andre the Giant. If I went to the ring to face Andre the Giant in a one-on-one wrestling match, the person I have to rely on to keep me safe while I'm in the ring is Andre the Giant. And I gotta be honest, I'm already a little worried that he might hurt me. He's gigantic. But you can imagine if for any reason his processes, judgment, or reaction times were slowed down even a fraction of a second, how much more likely it is that I am not coming out of that match and the canvas will have a black and pink stain in the center where I once was. Very likely, exceptionally likely. In that situation, I have to trust that Andre the Giant is 100% present, that he is fully there, and in reverse, he should expect every bit as much from me. When it's time for him to come over the top rope with his amazing tope con hilo, he knows that I need to be there 100% exactly on time, making sure that Andre the Giant doesn't paralyze himself. I've got to make sure that I catch him to the very best of my ability and bring him to earth as safely as Mike possibly can. If either Andre or yours truly went to the ring for that exact match under the influence of anything, we would be violating the other's trust. That implicit trust in professional wrestling, that understanding that we will be there for each other 100%. Because my job, as much as it is to perform, as much as it is to fill the time that we have been given, my job is to make sure that Andre the Giant walks out of that match in the same condition he walked in, so that he can go on to the next town and the next booking and keep making a living and providing for his family. Now, admittedly, the odds of me being booked on with Andre the Giant, especially in his current state, are fairly slim. But let's say that we did go to the ring together, and I have to admit I'd be at least a little bit concerned. What if he sits on me? Or he drops one of those elbows right in the center of my chest? He's a huge dude. You know this if you know your wrestling history, and Mike is a tad slight of frame. What's gonna happen to me? But if I was certain that in addition to all the inherent peril of being a professional wrestler, which the last time I checked is kind of like a contact sport, if I was certain that Andre the Giant was under the influence of drugs or alcohol as we were going to the ring, I would waste no time going directly to the promoter and expressing the fact that I do not feel safe performing. And I want to encourage you, if you are ever in a situation of that kind, to do exactly the same. It is not worth the risk. Accidents can happen in the ring even if we are well-trained, well-rehearsed, and exceptionally confident, and that is risk enough. The fact that accidents can happen even under those conditions is risk enough to all of our well-being, and we need to hold each other accountable, especially now, more than ever, as wrestling is finally, dare I say, trying to grow up. It is not the wild and reckless 80s anymore, and it is not the out-of-control 90s anymore, and I don't know what we want to say about the 00s. It's a totally different decade, though. And so now, before I get a little too fired up, let me switch perspectives. I talked a little bit about my point of view as a performer, but I also want to tell you about my point of view as a promoter, as someone that puts on live wrestling shows, and how the idea of this makes me feel. I would rather rewrite a card from start to finish 1 minute before we are supposed to go live than send even one of my performers to the ring with someone under the influence. Because that risk, under no sets of circumstances, under no conditions whatsoever, is ever worth it. And I know, if I took off my promoter hat for a second and put my performer hat back on, I might ask myself questions like, man, do I really want to make that kind of trouble for the promoter? Am I going to end up ruining the whole card? What other kinds of issues will be the domino effect from doing this? And if I take that off and put my promoter hat back on for a second, I, the promoter, am telling you I would always, always, always prefer that someone come directly to me, express their concern about it, and we address it immediately. We don't wait until the match is over and say, well, I thought I could take care of myself out there, or I wasn't that worried about it. None of those things will be any recompense if something goes wrong. Trying to get every line of this particular video out has been exceptionally frustrating to me because I am trying to resist the urge to want to scream about this. I am a little shell-shocked that it's something that needs to be discussed, and yet, because of how close to my personal sphere this came very recently, I realize I cannot avoid talking about it. And I know that there are people who turn up here to this channel because they don't get enough of the right kind of information wherever it is that they're training, or maybe they don't have a coach or a mentor available to them, and so you are counting on hearing this kind of stuff here. And no, you can't avoid this discussion. It has to be had. We probably aren't having this discussion enough in wrestling, but I want you to know that I kind of wish we had gotten to a point, all of us as a community, where no one even thought this needed to be addressed because the idea of it is absurd. That someone would end up going to the ring under the influence of anything that might impair them and expect that we will accept that. That we will allow that violation of our trust, because I think it is fairly safe to say we will not. We will not tolerate that in professional wrestling, nor should we be expected to when we give our health and our well-being and our safety to others, some of whom we are meeting for the first time just minutes before our music hits. And if this video is the first that such a topic has been broached in your imagination, and you are now thinking forward to yourself and imagining what might happen if you were in a scenario like what I have just described, and you think to yourself, but what choice would I have? What options would I have? I implore you, take this very, very seriously. You always have options. You can go to someone in charge. You can express the fact that you do not feel safe in trusting your body and your life to somebody who is under the influence. And if the people in charge of this organization, wherever you might be at that time, don't take that seriously, I can tell you what I would do in your shoes. If they insisted I went to the ring with someone who I was certain could not be 100% present for me because they are under the influence, I would pack up my bag and I would walk out. I don't care what's in that envelope. I don't care who's been promised I'm going to be there. I am not taking that chance in the ring, and I encourage you to adopt that same stance. Or to put it another way, any organization that is not going to prioritize your safety and well-being in a scenario like the one I just described, they don't deserve to have you on their roster. Take a little pride in yourself. Know what you are worth and realize it's not worth risking it in the ring under those conditions. I want you to know that as I'm attempting to elucidate on this topic, there's something loose in the back of my brain rattling back to a story that is now more than 10 years old that took place in the southern United States, and I think that's all the more descriptors I'm going to put on it. However, I was in a scenario there where I had to have a very awkward conversation in a locker room about someone who was under the influence of a certain substance. And I can already hear all the arguments and justifications that were levied against me on that very uncomfortable day about, well, you don't know how so-and-so handles his liquor, and you don't know what his tolerance for that substance is, and you know, he's responsible, it's not as if he's an addict, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm hearing all of those justifications bubbling up in the back of my brain like a counter-argument that no one is trying to make right now, and yet I know I've been confronted with that. And I don't doubt there might be a time and a place where you too are going to be confronted with that. And here's what I want to load you with, this information which I think is pretty difficult to refute. To help me over this mental hurdle, I'm going to name this person, and I'll use the name of someone who's famed for their sense of humor and renowned for being deceased, like Thesz. If Thesz decides that Thesz, in the privacy of his home, his private life, wants to take certain kinds of risks, then he can make that decision for himself anytime he chooses. But he doesn't also get to make that decision for me. And if we have to go to the ring together, and Lou happens to be under the influence, then he's also making that choice for me, to put me at risk. And I don't think that's fair. It's not unlike if we were going skydiving. Now, I have no interest in jumping out of a plane. You couldn't get me to do it. It's too risky. It terrifies me, to be quite honest. But it might be Lou's thing, and if Lou wants to make that decision for himself, cool. He can strap a parachute to his back, walk up to the open door of a plane, and jump out into the wild blue yonder because he takes those risks for himself. But he cannot also decide to strap one to my back, walk me up to that open door, and shove me out into the wild blue yonder and make me accept those risks if I don't want to. To do that, he is not just violating my trust, he's also a In summary, my thanks to the estates of Andre the Giant Thesz, by the way. If someone wants to accept certain risks, and it doesn't have to be as crazy as skydiving, right? If they want to be under the influence of drugs or alcohol in their private life where it can affect no one other than themselves, that's their choice to make. But no one can force me to accept the risk of performing with someone that is under the influence of drugs or alcohol. And even if you feel like you are being forced to accept those risks, understand you always have options, and nothing trumps your safety. Usually in this end bit is where I find a cute button to go out on, and there just isn't anything cute to be said here. I knew from the outset this one was going to be a bit prickly, but it's absolutely necessary. And if there's something further on this topic we got to discuss, you'll find me down below in the comments.